The Seattle Seahawks just turned a playoff game into a warning shot for the whole league. You do not beat the San Francisco 49ers by a score of 41-6 in January by accident. From the very first snap, when Rashid Shaheed took that kick and ripped straight through the coverage, it felt like the kind of night that tilts a whole postseason. The stadium shook, the noise never really came down, and somewhere on the other sideline, Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey had to realize they were walking into something different. Nobody expected Seattle to make one of the heavyweights look that powerless for that long. And the scary part is, they did it while their own quarterback was playing hurt. What makes this even more unreal is how balanced it looked once you pulled the score apart. The offense did not race around throwing deep shots all night, it just leaned on the run until San Francisco had no answers left. Kenneth Walker kept slashing through lanes, finishing runs, and turning simple handoffs into back-breaking plays, while Sam Darnold stood in there with that sore oblique and made just enough sharp throws to keep the defense honest. No wild risks, no reckless turnovers, just calm control from a player who knew his body was not close to perfect. On the other side, that Seattle defense hunted from snap one, squeezing every window Brock Purdy wanted and rallying to the ball before Christian McCaffrey could ever flip the game. It looked less like a lucky hot night and more like a team that has finally figured out exactly who it is. That is the part the rest of the bracket should be nervous about. The league has spent most of the season talking about other brands, while Seattle quietly built a formula that travels through any kind of playoff storm. A rabid home crowd, a defense that makes good offenses look slow, and an attack that can bleed the clock without ever taking its foot off the gas. This blowout was not just about one amazing return or one bad night for the 49ers. It was a preview of what happens when this offense leans all the way into its true identity. Because once you start looking closely at how they move the ball snap after snap, and how Kenneth Walker turned simple runs into body blows, you see why this unit suddenly looks like a playoff bully waiting to be unleashed. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Seahawks and all the NFL content. Can we hit 500 likes on this video? The wild thing about this win is that the Seattle offense never looked rushed, but every snap felt like a punch to the ribs. Drive after drive, they lined up, handed the ball to Kenneth Walker, and watched him turn simple zone runs into long marches that broke San Francisco's will. Instead of chasing highlight throws, Seattle kept stacking first downs, chewing clock, and forcing the Niners defense to tackle a powerful back who refused to fall on first contact. By the time people really noticed what was happening, the game script had flipped from a fun start to a slow squeeze, where every carry from Kenneth Walker made the field feel shorter and the night feel heavier for the visitors. What makes this offense so dangerous now is how well all the pieces fit together. Up front, Charles Cross and the rest of that line fired off the ball with purpose, sealing edges and climbing to linebackers so that cutback lanes opened right when Kenneth Walker planted his foot. When Zach Charbonnet was on the field earlier in the night, he brought that heavier style that softens a defense. Then Walker hit them with more burst and sudden cuts. Short fields, off special teams, and turnovers still had to be finished. And this group did that without wasting chances, turning red zone trips into touchdowns instead of empty field goals. It was not about fancy tricks. It was about an identity that finally looks locked in. The scary part for the rest of the league is that Seattle did all of this while asking their quarterback to play a very controlled game. The coaches built an approach that let Sam Darnold lean on the ground attack, pick his spots, and avoid putting his sore body in risky situations, which is exactly what you do when you believe your offense can win on balance rather than hero ball. That is where this story turns next, because the whole playoff ceiling for this team now runs through how Sam Darnold handles that oblique, how much more he can give, and how far this version of him can take a roster that suddenly looks ready for anyone. All week, the talk around the Seattle quarterback spot felt tight, like everyone was waiting for bad news that never quite came. Sam Darnold barely threw in practice. skipped the usual long warm-up on the field, and stepped into a playoff game knowing that every twist and every hit would send a shot straight through his side. You could feel it in the air on his first drop back, the whole building waiting to see if he would wince, flinch, or rush a CIE. Throw. Instead, he moved with calm feet, trusted his read, and treated the injury like background noise. The surprise was not that he fought through pain. Players do that every January. The surprise was how controlled he looked inside all that pressure. The moment that defined his night did not need a huge box score to back it up. In the red zone, with a rush closing in fast, Sam Darnold drifted away from contact and dropped a touch throw to Jackson Smith-Njigba, right where only his receiver could reach it. Falling away, defender tight, tiny window, and he still placed it like he was playing catch in an empty park. That ball did more than put points on the board. It told his own sideline that the injury had not stolen his feel or his nerve. This is the same player who spent earlier years hearing doubts from the outside, yet here he was in Seattle, making the kind of measured, fearless throw that you expect from a veteran who understands situation, score, and what his team actually needs from him. Now everything shifts to what comes next, because this is the version of Sam Darnold that can carry Seattle through a long January without trying to be a hero on every snap. Trainers can work on the oblique, coaches can build smart plans, but he controls the part that really matters: when to rip a tight throw, when to take the easy option, when to simply live for the next down. As long as he keeps leaning into that calm, efficient style, the Seahawks do not need him to put up wild numbers, they just need him to keep steering the ship, which sets up the real nightmare for the rest of the league. Because behind that steady hand is a defense that is starting to look like the main star of this whole run. And what they did to San Francisco is the clearest sign yet that this group might be ready for something much bigger. If the offense was the steady drumbeat, the Seattle defense was the thunder that never stopped rolling. Every time Brock Purdy dropped back, it felt like the pocket shrank faster than his reads could develop, because DeMarcus Lawrence, Leonard Williams, and the rest of that front kept crashing through protection with bad intentions but smart control. They did not need wild blitz calls to cause chaos, just a clean rush that made the quarterback reset his feet again and again until the timing of the entire San Francisco attack fell apart. By the middle of the night, you could almost see the hesitation, that half second of doubt before the snap, where an offense realizes there is no easy answer waiting. Behind that wall up front, the second and third level played like a unit that fully trusts each other. Ernest Jones ripped the ball out once, then later sat on a route and took it away again, turning promising drives into sudden changes that sucked the air out of the Niners sideline. Julian Love cleaned up in space. Devin Witherspoon chased down everything that even looked like a screen or quick throw, and Nick Emenwari moved like a piece you can place anywhere on the board without losing structure. Yards between the 20s did not bother them, because the real story was how often they forced empty trips, long field goals, or outright turnovers, instead of letting Christian McCaffrey find that one explosive moment he usually lives on in games like this. This was not a fluke hot night. It was the picture of a group that understands exactly how to choke out a high-powered opponent without losing discipline. What that creates now is a kind of pressure that goes way beyond one matchup. Any team looking at film this week knows they are walking into a building where this defense expects to hold you down, while the crowd turns every third down into a roar. And that is before you even mention what happens when Rashid Shaheed, or the return unit, flips the field in an instant. Seattle has built a defensive identity that feeds off momentum swings and noise, and that is the perfect bridge into the next part of the story, because the 12s and those special teams sparks are starting to feel like weapons of their own. There's a reason every team in the league secretly hopes they never see Seattle in a home playoff game. Before the offense even took a snap on offense, the crowd was already at full volume, and Rashid Shaheed turned that noise into fuel. One smooth cut, one burst through the lane, and suddenly, the 49ers were staring at a scoreboard that already felt tilted against them. That return was not just a fun moment. It was a message that this building and this special teams unit can flip a game before defense, or Sam Darnold even have time to settle in. When a playoff night starts with that kind of punch, everything after it plays out with a different kind of pressure on the visiting sideline. What makes it even more dangerous is that these sparks are not random accidents. They come from calculated moves that did not get enough attention when they happened. The front office went out and added Rashid, Shaheed, and Ernest Jones, and a lot of people shrugged, like those were small pieces on the edge of the roster. Now one of them is taking kicks to the house, and the other is ripping the ball out and stealing drives with timely picks, turning special teams and defense into a tag team that keeps handing short fields to Kenneth Walker and the offense. Mid-season trades usually give you noise without real impact, but in this case, Seattle turned them into core weapons that fit the identity they are building. When the ball is in the air on a kick or a punt now, it feels like another chance for this team to do something that flips momentum in a single heartbeat. All of that puts the 12s right in the center of the story. Every time Rashid Shaheed lines up deep or Ernest Jones jogs out after a kickoff, the crowd leans forward because they know one snap can turn into a game-changing play, and that energy feeds into every other unit on the roster. It is not just about noise for third down, it is about a full three-phase attack that uses atmosphere, smart trades, and explosive talent to squeeze opponents from every angle. The crazy part is that this blowout also opened a hidden door for Seattle, because while the city was celebrating those big plays, the staff quietly used that cushion to protect some key injured starters and test the depth behind them. And that is where the next layer of this run really starts to show. Nights like this usually come with a price tag, and for a few minutes, it felt like Seattle might be paying it. Zach Charbonnet left with that knee scare. Charles Cross went to the sideline with a lower body issue, and everyone already knew Sam Darnold was dealing with that tender core. In most playoff stories, that is the point where the mood turns, where a big win suddenly feels a little hollow. Instead, the reports out of the locker room were steady and calm. Talk of structure looking clean for Zach Charbonnet. Talk of Charles Cross coming out more as a smart call than an emergency. Add in the fact that Sam Darnold finished the night without any clear setback, and you start to see why this result was about more than just the score on the board. The real, quiet victory was how many answers Seattle found behind those names. When Zach Charbonnet checked out, Kenneth Walker simply absorbed the extra work and kept ripping off runs as if nothing had changed. When Charles Cross sat down, Amari Kite stepped in at tackle in a high-pressure moment and held his ground without the protection totally falling apart. Snaps that would have gone to the usual stars turned into live auditions for depth pieces, and they handled it with poise instead of panic. That is the kind of hidden information coaches dream about in January. Proof that if one piece is less than perfect, the whole system does not collapse. They walked out of this game with more trust in the back of the roster than they had 24 hours earlier. All of that folds straight into what comes next. Now Seattle heads into the conference round with their main playmakers banged up but not broken, with a quarterback who just got a lighter physical load in a playoff win, and with backup linemen who have already passed their first real test under the lights. While the rest of the bracket worries about fresh injuries and tired legs, this group gets extra days to patch people up and sharpen the pieces that just proved they can handle big snaps. Which is exactly why the next part of this story matters so much. Because when you look at possible matchups and the few teams still standing, you start to realize how big that health edge could be against whoever dares to walk into Lumen Field next. Somebody in the NFC is about to walk into a problem they did not plan for. The bracket says there are other threats, big brands, loud histories. But after what just happened to San Francisco, it feels like every road now runs through Lumen Field, whether people like it or not. If it is the Rams, you get a third battle with a division rival that already knows how violent this defense can be when it smells blood. If it is the Bears, You get Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson bringing that late game magic into a stadium that feeds off chaos even more than they do. Either way, the next opponent is stepping into a place where the home team just proved it can bury you early and never let you breathe again. Matchup-wise, there is no easy answer for them. The Rams want rhythm and timing. Long drives where Matthew Stafford can sit in clean pockets and pick at soft spots. But this Seattle front does not really believe in letting quarterbacks get comfortable. The Bears want to pound the rock, create broken plays, then let Caleb Williams turn the game into a backyard script in the fourth quarter. But they would be facing a front that just spent an entire night smothering Christian McCaffrey and chasing Brock Purdy into rush throws. Pick the style you want to bring, power or finesse, and Seattle has a way to lean on it until it cracks. That is why this win feels like more than a single step. It feels like the moment the conference quietly shifted from wondering if the Seahawks are for real to asking who actually matches up well with them over 4 quarters. Then you zoom out to the full picture and it gets even more interesting. With Bo Nix and Denver already gone, the likely cross-conference threats look like CJ Stroud with the Texans and Drake May with the Patriots. 2 rising passers trying to drag their own franchises to the big stage. Both are dangerous, both can steal a game if you lose focus, but neither is walking into this run with a defense playing at the level Seattle just showed or a crowd that shakes the building on every sudden change. Right now, the Seahawks sit in that rare spot where you can honestly say they look like the most complete team left. And that is where the real test moves from talent to mindset. The question now is not just who they face next. It is whether this group can carry the same edge and hunger into every week. And that is exactly where the heart of the story goes from here. Seattle are not the afterthought anymore. They are the team everyone else has to worry about. And that is where the real test starts. Inside that room, the standard has to stay higher than any hype, because one huge win means nothing. If Sam Darnold starts chasing glory throws, Kenneth Walker assumes every lane will be wide open, or Rashid Shaheed and Ernest Jones expect big plays to appear without the same work. If this group keeps living in the film room, fixing details, and walking into every week with the same edge they took into the San Francisco game, then all the noise about trophies and favorites will just match what they already believe about themselves, that this is exactly where they were always planning to end up.